All right, folks, we're going to get started here. Looks like the vast majority of your colleagues in class have joined us this evening. Welcome to QSM 548, Introduction of excuse me, Project Management. My name is Professor Jim Seymour, and just a way of brief introduction, I've been a faculty member here at NGS for almost 5 years. My primary role is I serve as lead faculty, primarily at the master's level groups, but I do also have led as project or faculty lead several bachelor cohorts as well. And it's a pleasure to join your group this evening to spend the next several weeks talking about a truly important component of quality systems management is the functionality of making successful projects and delivering successful results and things like that. And we'll get into more of that shortly. Just by way of additional introduction, I live in Massachusetts. I'm up on Cape Cod. Prior service, I did some time in the Navy, most of it in the reserves, and I work for the hospital system here on Cape Cod called Cape Cod Healthcare, and I'm in charge of training and education for the entire health system, anything that's non-clinical related. As my wife likes to tell me, remind me regularly, I have just enough clinical knowledge to be dangerous. What I'd like to do is briefly go around the room, or go around the web, if you will, the virtual room, and I'll call on each of you. I'm going to just probably go right down the list of names of attendees that I have in my GoToMeeting, so there won't be any particular order other than probably the way maybe you logged in, if you will. And just tell me who you are, where you're from, what do you do in addition to pursuing your master's, and I know you folks are on teams, so I'm curious to figure out who's on which team, and then I'll want to learn a little bit more about your projects as we go along in our conversation tonight. So I'm going to start with Cameron. Good evening.
Good evening, Professor. How are you?
Good to see you again, virtually.
Yep, you as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm out of Arizona.
I'm sorry, try that again.
Yep, I don't know if you remember, but I'm out of Arizona.
Yeah.
Yeah, last year I was a team of one in the bachelor's program, but this year for the master's, I do have a partner, coworker, Edgar Martinez. So
excellent.
Yep.
So you jumped right back in, I see.
Yeah, I took 2 months off and then jumped back in.
Excellent. Good. So it's you and Edgar, and what's the name of your team?
Team UTC.
Team UTC. Excellent. All right. Do you want to give me just, I'm probably, as I figure out whose teams, just a brief synopsis of what your team is undertaking in terms of a project?
Yes, currently our company's goal is for our quality inspectors to have a FPY of 98.8%. So we're just missing that mark. So we're trying to create kind of a standard work for our quality department to eliminate errors and defects and escapes to the customer and try to bring that percentage up.
Excellent. Okay. Terrific. Thank you. I appreciate that. Edgar, let's have you introduce yourself.
Edgar Martinez, like Cameron said, I'm a coworker of his. I was persuaded by him to join into the master's group, and like Cameron said, we're looking to improve our our FPY and help standardize more or less as well, so that not only our cell but other cells can have pretty much a high rating on our FPY.
And
Also out of Arizona.
yeah, okay. And so you're looking to get the inspection program improved to reduce defects, to improve your quality rate? Is that, in a nutshell, what I'm hearing?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Most especially to decrease all customer rejections.
Okay. So let me ask a question, just so and Cameron can allay this fact. I tend to drill into problem statements in projects. That's where my focus is. So are you looking to improve an aspect of the process to reduce the rejections, or is there something in the quality inspection that is preventing, to identify these defects so that they don't get to the customer? I'm just trying to get a little clarification.
It's more so the latter, as you mentioned.
Okay. So it's the inspection process that you're looking to
Yes.
improve. Okay. All right. That's what I thought you said. Okay. I appreciate that. Okay. So there's our first team, UTC, and it's Edgar and Cameron, both out of Arizona. Thank you. Let's see. Next up is David.
Yeah, my name's David Garkey. I live in Rhode Island, and my group is Sam, Ron, Larry, and then myself.
And what's the name of the team?
Variation?
Variation?
Yeah,
And it's Sam, Larry.
and Ron.
So you have a team of 4. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. And where in Rhode Island are you?
Just on the other side of Warwick, just west of Warwick, Rhode Island.
So below the airport?
Yep, just west of the airport a little bit.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So we're in the same geographic area. Kind of cool.
Yep.
Excellent. Okay. So since I jumped to you first, David, tell me a little bit about your project.
All right, so the project is to increase first pass yield for spring load on a steel assembly. So currently there's an issue with falling outside of tolerance, the spring load tolerance on it. So our goal is to figure out the variation in that process and hopefully reduce that and increase the first pass yield.
Excellent. Okay. David, thank you. Let's see here. Ron, how about introducing yourself, sir?
Hi, my name is Ron. I'm actually from Boston, Massachusetts. I do a little bit of biotechnology pharmaceuticals here, and I'm in team variation with David.
So you're physically in Boston now?
Yes, sir.
Oh, wow, that's unusual. This is the first time I've had more than one student, or myself and another that's from Massachusetts, from New England, or in the same. It's that's interesting. Cool. All right, so you're in Boston. You're working for a bio.
Yeah. So Boston and San Francisco are the only biotech hubs in the nation. So
Okay.
it's kind of the places to be. And yeah, I've been doing continuous improvement for a good 15 years or so. So this was kind of like the next step.
Get the degree behind you. Get the the extra the additional knowledge. Good. Wonderful.
Right.
I appreciate that. Let's see, Larry.
Yes, sir. My name is Larry Spicer, and I'm a director for loss prevention at Aurora Healthcare, and I'm out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Did you say you work for Aurora?
Yeah, Aurora Healthcare System.
Okay. Excellent. Wonderful. And let's see, the other team member is Sam Taylor. I thought I saw Sam logged in here. Sam, you with us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We
Sorry
sure.
about that.
That's okay. That we sure can.
All right, Sam Taylor. I'm in the U.S. Army. I am military intelligence. I'm a linguist, and I currently work as the 18th Airborne Corps Command Language Program Manager here at Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Excellent. Thank you for your service.
Thanks.
All right, so that's team variation. Wonderful. And let's see, who else do we have here? Megan Holmes.
Hi, my name is Megan Holmes. I'm from Springfield, Kentucky, and I am a technical analyst at Maker's Mark.
Maker's Mark, is that what I think that is?
Yes, we make bourbon
That's what I thought. Okay.
with the red wax.
Excellent. And fine Kentucky bourbon, might add.
Yes, sir.
All right, and what's the name of your team, Megan?
Team Prom Aircraft.
Team Prom Aircraft?
Yes, sir.
And who else is on that team with you, Megan?
Judas, DeCarlo, Matthew, and Jay.
So Judith, Matt, Jay, and yourself.
Judas, Matthew, DeCarlo.
Are you a team of, am I hearing a team of 5?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Okay, gotcha. All right, that's why, all right. All right, so you're from Kentucky. Do you want to tell me a little bit about the project? So,
Well, Jay can probably tell you it a lot easier than I can, but we're wanting to focus on the unscheduled maintenance for their aircraft. We're focusing on the C-13J Combat King II.
okay, and I realize he's traveling to Asia at the moment, so he's out of
Yes,
pocket.
sir.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes,
All
sir.
right. All right, wonderful.
But that kind of is roughly what we're working on.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Let's
You're
see.
welcome.
Matthew, are you on the line?
Professor, I don't know if you know Matthew is deaf.
Right.
So you might just have, okay.
I apologize. I did remember that. So let me just give me 1 second, please. Okay, I just sent him a message asking him a question. Great. I appreciate that. And okay, so and then Jay is traveling. So Judith.
Yes, sir. I'm Judith Antoine, and I'm in the U.S. Army and stationed in Key West, Florida, coming out of Maryland. My home state is Brooklyn, New York, and I'm the 5th member of Team Prime Aircraft. There were some glitches with one of the other team's champion, and so I migrated from that team to Team Prime Aircraft.
Excellent. Gotcha. Okay. And is your other, I'm not sure your other team member logged in. I don't see her present at the moment. All right, and then I've just heard from Matthew. He's located in Pennsylvania, works in the clinical laboratory as a quality control manager. Excellent. Okay. So I do not believe the fifth member of your team is logged in. I don't see her. How do you pronounce her name, please?
Bocalo, she's from South Africa, sir, and the time difference is quite a bit. So that's why it's a, but she's made all the meetings that I know.
So does she normally, is she able to attend the webinars, or does she review them after the fact?
She has been able to, sir, despite the time difference. She has been able to.
All right, understood. Okay, great.
And I think it depends on if she has internet connection, because sometimes she'll tell us like she doesn't have very good internet connection.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, gotcha. That's very, very helpful. Okay, all right. Let's go through some of the brief introduction pieces of tonight, and we'll go from there, and then we'll have a little bit more discussion. So what I want to do, since we've completed the introductions, I want to review the course syllabus and the assignments that are associated with this class. And make sure that everybody's on the same page and everybody's clear as a bell, okay? Before I begin, does anybody have any questions? Okay, so we'll get started. All right, so as you can see in the course description, we're going to be looking at the course description, and we're talking about we're going to explore project management, okay, and we're going to look at the 5 major processes of project management, and looking at initiating, planning, execution, monitoring, and control and closure. And we'll merge this with how does this apply to the MPP projects that you're doing, and how does it dovetail into the best practices for today's quality management, and how do we see the alliance or the alignment between PM and define, measure, improve, analyze, improve, and control DMAIC approach. So the course objectives here that we're going to ask at the outcome of this class will be to identify and explain the use of project management approaches and tools. Again, looking at charters, stakeholder, work break structure breakdown, estimating duration, and scheduling, which are all integral pieces of PM. And again, linkage and relationship of PM to the DMAIC in your projects. and ultimately to be familiar with the body of knowledge. Okay, so the outcomes here are to give you the basic project management knowledge and skills that you would be able to apply in any situation where project management would be appropriate. And also to look at the projects that you're doing for this course and for your champions, looking at how do we apply the management tools and the concepts. And ideally, the outcome will be have you competent enough and confident enough that you could perform in the project manager role for quality improvement projects. Okay. And the texts are the project primer, the book Fast Forward MBA, and a video review of the Gember Academy, the Three Voices video. There are additional subject texts that are supplemental, and some of you may have access to Microsoft Project or other project management software. It's not a requirement for this course, but sometimes those help, and so forth. So let's look at the assignments and how they break out in terms of how we're going to, because everybody's obviously interested in how am I going to be graded, what's the percentage, what's the weight, okay? And as you can see, the number of assignments, in addition to the weekly discussion questions, are here. And we'll go through each of these in a little bit greater depth in the syllabus. So you can see how they are weighted out. The forum questions, obviously the weekly participation, have a 20% value to that. So let's look at week one. So in week one, we were asking you to read the first 4 chapters of the Fast Forward Management book and to look at the slides in advance of the class. And I find advanced reading of the slides helps, quite frankly, guide your questioning and help to maybe even unpack the content that we're looking to go through this evening, or in each evening, in greater depth. So as you look through the syllabus, you'll see each assignment is listed, whether it's a team assignment or it's an individual assignment, what the assignment is, and I ask you to stay to the assignment, and with the due dates. So for example, assignment 1, the team assignment, stakeholder register, is due before the start of class next week. That is a team assignment. I have, in the coursework, I have put the dates and the time when assignments are due. I've opened up the first 2 weeks already of your assignments, this week and next week's assignments. I'll get through week 3, 4, and 5 over the next week or so that they'll all be there. So you can see how that works out. Assignment 2 is an individual paper. And that is due before class on June 7th. So for this week, you have an assignment that is due next week, a team assignment, and an individual assignment that is due 2 weeks from now. Also, there are 2 discussion questions out there that the typical expectation of discussion questions, post and reply. Okay. Looking ahead to next week, we'll look at how the planning phase and how we process groups, how that'll work. So we're asking you to read chapters 5 through 9 in preparation for next week. Those topics talk about the various defining problem statements, business cases, looking at scope, work breakdown structure. And if you've ever been involved in project management, and probably most of us have some experience with project management, just determining the scope of the project is incredibly important, so that you really focus in on what the project's about based on your customer requirements matrix, your champion's needs, and so forth. But you also want is those final two pieces are incredibly important. Determining the proper sequence of your project, the duration and schedule of that, and how do you coordinate all of that, and what is the critical path to success for the outcome of a project. And of course there are assignments. So assignment 3 is again a team assignment, and the team assignment is to develop a work breakdown structure, to develop a survey in support of your master's business project. This work breakdown structure must meet the standards outlined in next week's slides. The use of the Excel spreadsheet template is available for you, or you may select to use another different format. And what we want you to do is transfer it to a PowerPoint. And develop a network diagram that displays the sequence, the duration of tasks, and the project list towards that critical path. All right, that's in 1 or 2 slides. Look at including task durations. You can use 3 of the PERT method, again in slide 1. And this is due Wednesday of the 3rd week, and it needs to be uploaded. So this is a team assignment, so one upload from each team, and that is due before Wednesday, June 7th. And then assignment 4 is related to your MBB, a scope determination and risk mitigation exercise. Again, looking at based on your macro flows, looking at inclusions. Again, PowerPoint, 2 slides. Looking at your FFA with appropriate risk factors, and what are the mitigation strategies or approaches that you would implement for addressing restraining factors or other risks that you've identified in your MPB. And this is due before week 4, so that is June 14th. And again, prior to start. So when these assignments are due prior to start, we're talking they're due the day of the webinar at 8 p.m. or 2000 hours Eastern Daylight Time or Eastern Standard Time, depending on where we fall. Actually, it'll be daylight time the whole time. So before the start of the webinar, they need to be uploaded. And as you probably have been made acutely aware, there's a greater emphasis from NGS on timely submissions. And again, that will impact ultimately the grades for these assignments of having them uploaded on time. If there is a valid reason why you may need extra time, and I understand that that does happen, life does get in the way. I need to know in advance. It's not something I can deal with after the fact, and we can work through that. I know some of you are on active duty and things like that too. Do get in the way in other work commitments, but we've got enough of a lead time that you know what's expected of you, so I just ask you to manage the workload appropriately. And we've got decent sized teams, so spreading the workload around seems to me to be fairly reasonable. We've got, a few larger teams. I know, and then we've got, I know we have Cameron and Edgar working together, but they work in the same facility, so hopefully that's mitigates some of that challenge as well. Okay. So in week 3, we're asking you to read chapters 11, 13, and 14, and we're going to focus in on how do we estimate the time needed to do specific pieces of projects, what our comm strategy is, what's our resource look like, how are we going to, our human resource piece, how are we going to get the workforce that's necessary, whether it's internal, how are we going to get the, if we have to backfill to support the project, what's that strategy look like? Do we need outside resources to help us backfill or actually do the work? As the team evolves, what does that look like? What's the development that we want to look for to be successful, as well as the dynamics that exist within any team, some of the basics of that. We'll talk about change management, which in project management, you can't overlook that it does cause, even in the smallest of projects, there's some change that is going to be taking place because we're going to be doing things, whatever that project leads to, the process or wherever we're going, will look different after the project has been done if we're successful. And, what are some of the configuration strategies and plans that may be needed in place as well. And additionally, we'll talk about quality plans. So, and then assignment 5 is an individual assignment, and we're looking at balancing scope, schedule, and quality. And we're looking for a 2 to 3 page paper on what your individual approach would be to get a improvement project back on track. The lesson slides in the portal for assignment scenario will give you the requirements. Okay, title reference pages should be included, but they don't count as part of the 2 to 3 pages. Okay, and this is due Wednesday before week 4, so that is again June 14th. All right, and you'll see that there's a portal location for that to be uploaded. Assignment 6 is a team assignment, and we're looking at QA/QC approaches. So we're looking at your internal views and procedures for any of the academic and champion-related deliverables. Include how your team works through to ensure timely delivery of assignments that are error-free and either meet or ideally exceed academic requirements. And then we want, what are the quantitative metrics your team is using to monitor the quality of your work? Again, PowerPoint slides, 1 to 2 slides. And this is due before the final week, which would be the 21st. All right. Week 4, we're looking at and focusing in on, now we've got the plan developed, we've got the resources, and how do we execute the plan? How are we monitoring its progress? And what are our control mechanisms? And then how do we wrap it up and move on? And we'll ask you to look at chapters 10, 15, and 16 for that. And we'll talk about these various topics, monitoring, quality reviews, closure, lessons learned, and some other different types of alternative methods. So the final assignment, which is, again, in a team assignment, we take all of the slides based on our feedback, and the final evening we'll have a presentation that contains the following slides that are listed below. And you will present that, each team will present that online to the class on the final week of the course. So the presentation will have these slides: the team slide, the problem statement, your champion slide, your key stakeholder register, a macro flow with related scope notes to your MPB, your CRM, your work breakdown structure, your QA, QC procedures, and again, lessons learned to date. What I'm envisioning is each team will have 15, probably closer to 20 minutes to navigate through there, to take any questions, receive feedback, and we'll go through that. And then the final week is the presentations. Any questions? And of course, there will be discussion questions weeks 1, 2, 3, and 4, most likely. Any questions? Okay. So let's see. It's all right. Let's go through. What I like to do is particularly where there's a lot of presentation. In this case, there is a lot of one-sided conversation. I'll probably take a break, about a 5-6 minute stretch break, give you a chance to get up, get water, beverage, whatever you need to do, so that we can press on, and then we'll continue the presentation. So we'll probably go another 10 minutes or so, and then take a slight 3 to 5 minute break. Okay, folks?
Yes, sir.
Good. Okay. So let's go back to our presentation. Okay. So again, the objectives of the next several weeks and the classwork and the assignments are to help each of you become more familiar with the fundamentals of project management. And again, how do we take the approach to project management with our particular emphasis on quality improvement projects, and flesh that out and make that viable and appropriate. So, what are some of the potential project management roles relating to quality systems management? So you could serve as a Lean Six Sigma black belt in a way that identifies green and black belt projects while providing oversight and direct management to those particular projects. You could potentially also serve as a project manager to any other improvement initiatives that may be outside of Lean Six Sigma. Again, serve as a PM for maybe potentially major transformation or reorganization. And again, looking at PM for strategic planning, goal action items, or maybe even serve as an improvement consultant. So we're going to use as the basis of our understanding and content and education the PMI standards, looking at what PMI is. They're the most widely recognized certification. You can actually become certified as a project manager. And the criteria for a PM certification is not only experience but education. Additionally, there's a competency exam to lead and manage projects. As you can see, the credential has some pretty significant requirements. With a bachelor's degree, it requires 4,500 hours of documented project management experience, or with a secondary degree, 7,500 hours. 35 hours of direct certified project management training, and the certification exam, successful navigation of that. So the project management body of knowledge, the PMBOK, will be the basis for the work and effort that we'll do in this course. So let's start with some of the basics. What is a project? According to PMI, it has a definite beginning and end. It should be unique. It should not have been attempted before in the organization. It has a specific purpose, whether it's a product outcome, a service, an end result. So it has a specific beginning and an end. Projects don't continue on infinitum. They have specificity, and they are unique. So some of the ways in which a projects are generated, there may be a market demand that has caused a need for an improved process or a new product that causes the need for a project. There's been a need identified within the organization for an improvement or a change. Maybe a customer is going in another direction and potentially we are their resource for a particular raw material item or whatever, and it may cause us to look at a new process that we need to do to meet that request. Moving forward in technology, computers, other systems, you'll see a lot of PM work, project management work, particularly in systems and programming upgrades and the like. So for example, in my healthcare system, we are transitioning from a bunch of standalone systems over to an Oracle product called PeopleSoft. And many of you may be familiar with PeopleSoft. And we're transitioning over to their human resource platform, their finance platform, which is the GL, the accounts payable. We're looking at the procurement platform, which is our inventory control, our ePro and purchasing, as well as their cloud-based application called Taleo, which is how applicants apply for positions and attract through that whole process. And it's all integrated into a single database that is ultimately, at the end of the day, will be a very good thing for our organization. But it's when it's all said and done, it'll be a 2-year project. There may also be a legal requirement that may cause a project to be put in place. Maybe there's a change in the way in which things need to happen. In healthcare, Affordable Care Act may cause it. In the military, there may be a new policy that makes the way in which you do things need to be changed. Same thing in production, whatever. And again, looking at things, jobs and things like that we might bid on if we're in that particular type of business, the statement of work and the contract, what that might cause an effort to create a project, because there may be an appropriate need to have a team develop a project with a beginning and an end to fulfill some contractual obligations. Quality folks and black belts are usually and many times involved in looking at, how are we going to nominate and prioritize improvement projects, because in a lot of organizations there may be multiple projects that are important, and how do we prioritize them if there's resource constraints and things like that. So each of you in some way, shape, or form have had extensive project management experience, planning a trip, a vacation, Christmas shopping, maybe a little bit more of a focus on improvement projects, whether it's a Lean Six Sigma, Kaizen, or benchmarking. You know, doing remodeling of the house, as it says here, sewing a pair of socks, painting a room. You know, what's the prep work? Got to move the furniture, got to cover the furniture. Do I need to do repair work on the walls, or if I'm doing the ceilings, all that kind of stuff. How you get a degree, that's project management. It has a particular beginning and an end. It has a set of curricula that you follow through. And those of you that have participated in a Bachelor's Business Project and now an MPB have had or will continue to have project management experience. So when you look at the implications of the way in which an organization is structured, organizations whose business is project-based will obviously or more often have a focus that is better suited for project work. Some of the categories are functional or project-based, or there's a matrix, a combination of two. Project-based folks will need folks that are trained who can employ both the process and project-based methodologies to be effective. Talk more about that a little later on. So when we're talking about functional delivery, actually, why don't we pause there for just a few minutes, take a quick break. It is now about 10 minutes and 9. Let's reconvene in about 3 to 5 minutes. Give you a chance to stretch, bathroom break, whatever you need, and we'll reconvene in about 5 minutes. Okay?
Sounds good. Thanks.
Possible coffee.
There you go. All right, folks, going to reconnect here and get back in where we left off in talking about functional organizations and their delivery. So when we're focused in on a functional delivery style of organization, they provide whatever they produce or the service they meet, the service needs that they meet are on a more of a routine basis. So the characteristics they have are long-term personnel who maybe work for the same manager, sales, engineering, accounting departments. There's a hierarchical structure based mostly on specialty. Again, functional supervisors have a lot of authority to make decisions. Project managers are part-time and have a limited focus of decision making. Usually these folks have a ton of responsibility and minimum authority. And in this case, in a functional organization, the functional structure has a greater priority or a tendency to be viewed as more valuable than projects, and a lot of times there's a limitation to the resources that may be available for a project. If we look at a functional structure, so we have senior leadership, we have functional managers who may be also serving as coordinators of a project, and then different staff members may be involved in it on a limited basis, as you can see here. if we look at it from a different perspective, an organization that is got a strong project focus, the organization is more suited and more focused for assembly projects versus in a functional lineup. Project managers tend to manage both the people and the project. The PM has full authority over the various pieces, the financial aspects of the budget, the resources, and have the ability to make decisions. And team members are on the project and don't have an alliance or an association with a particular function area. And in this case, these projects are have the highest priority of focus and are well resourced. So with a what we call projectized or a strong focus, as you can see, the coordination of the project. Again, the staff is engaged in project activity, as you can see as a lineup here. Then we have what we call matrix organizations. These are hybrids where in some cases individuals may have a dotted line to two or more bosses. They may have a functional supervisor for their day-to-day tasks and also have a responsibility to a project manager. Power is generally shared. If it's a weak matrix, the functional supervisors have more authority. In a stronger matrix, the project manager is the one who has the greater ability to influence decision making. And in matrix organizations, there's probably most likely a definite competitiveness for prioritization over functional areas and the resources for the project. So as you can see in a hybrid, project managers may be more in this aspect that they're tapping various staff members that are aligned vertically to a functional manager. So they may be dedicated 30% to your project and 70% to the functional area of their area of responsibility. So what are we talking about here? Strong matrix, looking at Mr. Anderson and the quality improvement team. So let's look at this a little bit in a greater organizational structure with some more focus. And this is from a project management perspective, and we're looking at from a weak matrix to a stronger project focus. So the various characteristics. So project manager's authority. In a functional world, they have very little, if any, authority. Weak matrix, again, very low. Balanced, maybe moderate. As you move towards stronger and more project-based, they move to a higher level of authority to maybe total control. Again, very similar in the resource availability. In the functional world, it's limited, and when we move down to the other end of a projectized focus of structure, a significant focus on or access to resources. And again, it makes sense that where the authority lays is focused on is where the management of the project takes place. So in functional, it's the functional manager, where in the project end, it's the project manager. And as we, again, shift from a functional-based focus to more project-based, you can see it goes from a part-time into more of a full-time, there's not competing needs for the attention of the manager. And as you are more project-based, there's more of a support staff or an administrative staff to help with the tasks of documenting or managing, for example, in a lot of projects, if it's a large one, you may have a SharePoint site that has a lot of document managing that needs to be done, or minutes of meetings that need to be taken and distributed, or, various activities, whether it's, configuration, testing, whatever it might be, and how all that is managed and structured, and what is the business process guides maybe that, or the business processes, and what are the deliverables post-project, so that we know what we did in the project. So if there's for example, in a computer-based project, you need a full book of knowledge of all the work that was done. So if there was an upgrade to the system, the rationale of why you did a particular programming of a particular area or process in this way, why, so that when you look at upgrades and things like that, what's the impact of the upgrade, and where do you have to pay attention to? So let's just pause here for a second, and let's talk about these. Have any of you ever been involved in a project that is more functional based, and what does that look like? Or more have you been involved in some sort of a matrix kind of project process, or strictly project based? I've been involved in probably a little bit of all of them, and so, for example, do you see a consulting company as a functional or a project-based entity?
This is Sam. I think it would probably be a project-based.
Probably, yes. More realistically, consultants tend to be more project-based. Their relationship is for a set amount of time or for a specific outcome. I'd say that's fair. How about a construction company?
Would that be the same, project-based? They're hired to do a project?
It could be more. It depends. It may be a matrix. Depends on who's doing the work. What are you doing? But it could be a little bit of both. How about a restaurant?
Functional.
Exactly. Okay. So let's look at a few definitions of some key terms in the PM world. So when we're looking at a portfolio, so this is a bigger scope, a broader look at the various types of projects and programs and things that are to achieve strategic objectives. So the portfolio is more of a strategic view of what the work and the effort that's being done. Program would be a series or a group of related projects or activities that are coordinated together. So, and then a project is a temporary endeavor, and the emphasis is projects have a finite life to them that will create something new and unique, whether it's a product, a service, or an outcome. Stakeholders are team members or anyone that may be impacted by the outcome or impacting the project directly by efforts that they're undertaking. And, most projects, every project I've been on has a champion, a sponsor, or senior leadership. So in layman's terms, how to define what a project manager is. is somebody that is formally identified and empowered to use resources for a outcome, for a deliverable result. They're in control of the project. They may be authorized to spend the project's budget, and a lot of projects that, you know, the bigger, more complex spend may need executive sponsor approval, but the day-to-day expenditure of resources is at the project manager level, and to some level authorized to make some decisions for the project. Again, maybe with executive sponsor oversight. So the competencies for a PM from the PMI, the Institute, would be knowledgeable in more than 40 different processes, 10, actually more than 10 areas of knowledge. And this would be in preparation to take the project manager's exam. Also, you would look at areas of expertise and standards, you know, within a particular application, whether maybe it's construction, maybe it's software. Looking at the ability to scan an organization and look at its environment, whether it's a functional matrix or project-based. And again, some basic general management skills, planning, organizing, and leading. And the ability, a good project manager has to have good interpersonal skills, because you may have competing factors or camps in a particular project vying for a particular direction. And you need to keep the overall goal and focus of the project at hand. So skillfully being able to communicate and negotiating within those conversations, along with active listening skills, is incredibly appropriate, especially on the more complex projects.
Sir?
So,
Sir, I have a question.
yeah, go ahead. It sounds like I have somebody.
This is Judith.
Hi, Judith. How are you?
Good, sir. I'm trying to make sense of all of this, putting it in somewhat of a military time framework. So, as you were talking about construction, restaurants, so looking at a military organization, how would you categorize that? I'm trying to make it make sense to me. And so,
I'd say the military is probably, in my opinion, probably in essence leans probably towards more of a formal or a functional. Again, there may be, and it depends, you know. I would see it probably more as a functional matrix outlay. There are certain specific tasks that you do. Now, some of you are in the military and you are doing project-based, so this is in addition to your other job. The project isn't your entire job. Does that make sense?
yes, sir.
So I would see that. Again, I think there's formal authority in the military that may be more vibrant than, say, in some other areas, but I would see the military as probably more functional. Does that help?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So looking at project manager skills, we're looking at, you know, this formal versus informal authority. We're looking at leading, communicating, negotiating, and influencing. So let's look at the areas that a project manager needs some knowledge of how to apply the requirements. So in the integration area, they need to be able to identify and define and coordinate activities within the various groups. So they need to make sure that everything is whether it's vertical or horizontal, they're connected and they're in the right sequence, and how those activities work because they're interrelated. Looking at project scope, do we have all of the necessary work and activities that we will need to complete to make sure the project is successful? And, projects have an expected time of delivery. How well are we managing the timely completion of the project? And how are we managing costs with the various activities of looking at all of these things, the estimating, budget, financing, funding, and controlling costs so that we can enable the project to finish on time and within budget? What are the quality processes that we will identify that will help satisfy the needs for which the project was initially undertaken? The human resource piece talks about not only leading the team, what role and who's going to be responsible, and what are the skill sets that are needed for those various roles and responsibilities, as well as how is the chain of command, or what's the reporting relationship across the spectrum of our people resources. Communication, communication, communication. In projects, you need to, over-communication can't be stressed enough. You need to continue to make sure that there is appropriate assimilation and distribution of information, as well as, the planning resources, and all of that, so that the information is in the right hands at the right time and so that it is useful. Because failure to get information into people's hands could cause unnecessary delays in project. Always looking at what are the risks. What are the risks if we can't meet this deadline? And more importantly, how do we control, or what's our plan to mitigate that risk? Looking at all of that, that's something that is ongoing in a project. How do we get the resources we need from outside the project to help for the successful delivery of a project? Who are the proper stakeholders? What are their expectations? And how do we engage them and keep them in the particular decisions and activities? Any questions on these 10 areas of knowledge from a project management perspective? And what, when someone says I'm managing a project, these are very, very important concepts and areas for them to be aware and have the skill sets to manage effectively. So what's the difference between a project manager and a program manager? Again, as we said earlier, a program is a collection of related projects that share a common goal. So a program manager may be managing a series of, or overseeing a series of project managers. So as in the example, we have program 1, which is project A, B, and C, whereas we have a separate program, which is D and E. And in a large company, a portfolio manager may oversee several programs. So what's a PMO and what's its role? Some of the things that they do are looking at guidance and training project managers, looking at policy and how, different organizations will manage projects. How do we assign resources? What's our standard templates? How do we judge lessons learned? What are our best practices? And where are we having a repository of information learned? And what is our reporting structure, and how do we interface with the senior leadership? How do we make those executive briefings? What's the standard template? How do they like to see information? How often do they want to see it? And how are the projects selected in terms of the way in which they support the strategic objectives and needs of the organization? This could be generally, many times, is a role of a master black belt within the organization. So let's talk about what we call the triple C, the iron triangle, if you will. And these are all interconnected in terms of our focus on quality. So when you look at time, scope, and cost, they're all interrelated, and the quality of how we look at that impacts all of them. So if you change one of them, for example, say the cost of the project, if you have a reduction in cost, it's probably going to impact the time that you have to complete the project and maybe what the focus of the project could be. Because you can't change one of them without impacting all the others. So if you expand the scope, do you need more time to complete the project? Do you need more resources? Does the cost go up? And a project manager must continuously balance and monitor all those factors. So the next focus point is in terms of what we call the processes, the foundational processes. These aren't phases. They're not, you stop one, you start one, and you move on. A lot of times, the initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, control, and closing may happen more than once and may need to be revisited more than once throughout the project. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. So when you're looking at a summary of a process group, it's a logical sequencing, a grouping of activities, inputs, tools, and outputs, not all inclusive, but of the project. So for example, when we're looking at the initiating, we're defining the project, who are the stakeholders, and an authorization or a statement of work. And we look at what are some of the outputs from that phase. We have an initial charter, and who are our stakeholders. So once we have that in place, we now begin to look at what's the plan. How are we going to obtain those objectives? What is our work plan? So we look at what's the scope, the requirements, how do we schedule it, what are all the other key pieces to it that we talked about earlier, communication, risk, procurement. All right. Again, so all of the planning that goes into this. The next piece is how do we execute the plan that we've developed? What are our deliverables? How do we look at assessing our performance? How are we managing our status? What happens if we need to have change requests, or who's monitoring the issue log that's discovered along the way? What's the approval process for a change request? How do we address an issue that is placed in the issue log? And then as we work the plan and we get the plan flowing, we got to manage and review our progress. Is there variance? Is there change? How do we control the plan? So what do the change logs look like? How are the approved change requests being managed or instituted? Do we need to update the project plan? Do we have acceptable deliverables? And then finally, we're looking at finalizing the activities and formally concluding the project or the end of the work. Have we met the final product or service, the end result, i.e. the purpose of the project? Has that been done? And there's a formal closing off and signing off of acceptance of the project. So some of the process-related definitions. An activity is an action performed by a person or a system. A process is a sum of activities that are performed to accomplish work. Tools and techniques. What's the methodology to perform an activity? And what is the tangible outcome performed by the process? And each of the groups will be defined in these terms. So again, when we go back and look at initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and controlling, again, they're revisited through the project. So let's kind of look at how project management and the phases of, in their phases, how do they connect with the MPB and its relationships? So we're looking at the initiating phase, which it would have been way back in your first MP, as you approached your first MPB. You know, what are the requirements? You identified potential candidate projects, looking at which one may be the best MPB candidate, and the establishment of the teams. And I know the teams did change a little bit, I'm assuming, beyond this step, but that's okay. Then you looked at what are the customer requirements matrix, or what are the champion requirements, the organizational requirements, looked at what's the scope, and probably took a first pass at a problem statement, which in most cases is probably way too broad and wide, and you needed to refine it. And then you established a charter with the champion signing it, you folks signing as team members, along with your NGS representative. And then you began looking at the measure and analyze phase of DMAIC, looking at what are the deliverables that you'll need to bring to your champion. Monitoring control, looking at the gated assessment or the feedback in your development course and in your MPP2 courses. Again, your champion review processes, these will be coming, you know, again, the executing, monitoring, control are done probably multiple times. And then as you close out, as you get down to MPP3, your acceptance of your output or your results of your MPP3, and ultimately the presentation of your MPP3 to your classmates and others on the final evening of class. So as you can see, the 5 processes here in your projects are very interrelated in the class and champion activities and how they connect and identify with the phases of project management. So in initiating a process group, you develop a charter and you identify stakeholders. Again, developing a charter, as you are aware, is usually done very early in the work situation. Looking at templates, again, what's the selection process? What's the projected return on investment? Some of the, whether you use milestone Gantt charts, you know, what are our inputs? What's the problem statement? What does the customer need? What's our statement of work? Any appropriate contracts? What's the financial ramifications? And then coming out of that is a signed document by the sponsor that allows the project to proceed. And as you noticed, as you're aware, for MPB projects here at NGS, this was done and approved in your course, EDU 638. I'm sorry, you haven't gotten that far yet, have you?
No, sir.
Okay. See, I'm usually I'm usually leading these things. So again, as you develop these charters and things like that, so that ultimately you will have approval by the business development course, which is EDU 638. So the elements of a charter are a high-level description. What's the purpose? How are you going to measure it? Some of the other things are, what's the expectation? Budget if needed. The project manager will most likely be the team members and the approval signatures. And there's a template in your course materials where appropriate, and you'll fill that out, that template. You will insert your information, your project champion and guiding coalition, and then ultimately your lead faculty will sign off as a representative of NGS at the appropriate time. And then that would be uploaded into the tracker as one of the formal documents in support of your MPB. So looking at stakeholders, who has a vested interest? Who needs to be involved in the project? What are some of the tools and techniques, whether it's brainstorming, interviewing, who knows or has worked in similar projects? Again, what's that stakeholder register look like? Sponsors are important. They have the ability to fund your project, provide resources. Customers are the folks who receive the end result of products or services. And again, stakeholders are those who have a vested interest, who may exert influence. This is not your champion, but they may or may not be necessarily customers or sponsors. But you may have somebody that's in the organization that could prove either very useful or very problematic because they have a vested interest into either making an improvement, or in some cases, we were talking about earlier about change management. They fear change because they're unsure of what the future will hold for either themselves, their colleagues, or the work that they're doing, and it may be moving them out of their comfort zone. So when we're looking at initiating a project, here are some of the activities associated with that. The project manager, or in your case the team, would meet with the senior champion, your sponsor group, to get real clarity on what's the expectations of that champion and sponsor, what are the roles and the level of authority, and there would be introductions if they were unknown to the team. If there's a contract or contract-based, review all the requirements and how does that look. Plan kickoff meetings and introductions so that, again, team members know one another and they understand and are connected to one another. So a few minutes ago you saw the acronym RACI, and we want to talk about this. And this is a tool that talks about responsibilities. So who's responsible for the task? Who has been assigned to work on the task? With the always question in projects, who's accountable? Should this be a single individual or a group? Basically, whose head's going to roll if this goes wrong? Or who has the authority to make a decision? Have we consulted? Have we reached out to everyone who can communicate to me about the particular project or task that we have in hand? Have we identified all the proper stakeholders? Have we informed those whose work depends on this task? Have we informed those who can be kept updated about the progress? Again, RACI would be used with the team and the stakeholders, particularly with governance and oversight members. Again, who's responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. So we've referred to in a few slides this tool called Stakeholder Register. So this identifies all the parties that would need to be managed and engaged through the project. It would also identify what their level of influence is or the relationship to the project. You'd want to use this for comm strategy, engagement strategies, assessing risk, and looking at any sort of inputs or future changes that may come along. So here's a sample of a stakeholder register. So who is the person? What is their position? Do they have a role? And so for example here, in this case, the employees, they're not directly involved in MPB. So what is their responsibility? Were they consulted? Are they accountable, or have they been informed? So as you can see here, the various components here have talked about that. What's the comms method? So for example, the IT director, it's a weekly meeting. You know, she wants, this particular individual wants face-to-face meetings, twice weekly, do not text. The champion wants to see meet monthly with the team. And again, with the employees, it's a newsletter, blogs, and staff call. Interest, you don't plan any new software work without Mike's involvement. Again, the customer is giving you the requirements. The champion is monitoring progress and helping solve problems. And the employees want to hear about the progress of your project, especially if it's going to impact them. Again, where is the influence of the project outcome? Any questions on that? We're going to ask you to do one of these for your MPB as part of the assignments this course. We'll be referring back to this more than once. Okay, so let's go back. I know we spent some time on the syllabus earlier. So let's go back and look at assignment 1, and it's to develop a stakeholder register, and it is due and uploaded in the course portal before the start of class next week. So what you're going to do is you're going to build on your champion and day-to-day champion folks. So we're going to ask you to develop a stakeholder register and identify each of the key people, their relationship with the project using the template. That's a good question, Matthew. Hold on. Matthew is asking a question, and hold on. Yeah, I'm going to send it out to you all so you can see it. So Matthew's question says, does involving employees of the organization increase the buy-in of projects? And the answer is yes. It sure does. And it is highly recommended and a highly recommended strategy. So again, looking at 1 to 3 PowerPoint slide, identify the relationship to the project, looking at stakeholder, RACI communication method at a minimum. What I would recommend is use this sample. You can use something if you're more familiar. There is one that you use in your organization, but this is pretty straightforward, easily enough built and established. And again, just to review assignment 2, this assignment is looking at the selection phase of the project. So the scenario is a senior leader of a large organization with 5 divisions asked you to establish a repeatable process that will identify, prioritize improvement projects for the entire organization and include all functions. The leader wants you to your process to provide the senior leadership a team of prioritized lists of improvement projects each quarter. Senior leadership will then decide which projects will be chartered for further action. These improvement projects may include Lean Six Sigma, Green Belt projects, benchmarking studies, quick Kaizen events for rapid improvement, and each of you are asked to write a 2 to 3 page paper addressing the following requirements. An introduction paragraph summarizing the requirements. In the main body, what organizational approach would you recommend? Your approach should include multiple inputs and sources for project nomination. You could do it graphically if you choose. What is your approach to prioritizing projects once you've identified them? And be sure to reference resources to include current and prior course texts and other research. If you are using others' work, you need to reference it. So, lesson 2, planning process group. All right.
A quick question.
Yep.
For the paper, is there a certain format we need to follow?
I would stick with APA.
Okay.
Please. Keep it simple. All right. Are there any questions? Everybody understand what the deliverables are? Okay. I will stay online to address any individual needs or concerns that you may have. This is going to end the formal presentation of the lecture, but again, I will remain on the web, and if you have individual questions or group-related questions related to project management or whatever, I'm more than happy to answer them.